Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss He Got Game, starring Denzel Washington, Milla Jovovich, Ray Allen, Rosario Dawson, Hill Harper, Zelda Harris, Ned Beatty, Jim Brown, Joseph Lyle Taylor, Bill Nunn, and Michael Shea, directed by Spike Lee. Now, before I get into this review, I've never seen this movie, but I will talk about the movie that I did watch for this review, Jungle Fever. And what did I think of it? I liked it, actually. The movie with Wesley Snipes and Samuel fucking Jackson, with Halle Berry in one scene. That was a good movie, actually. But let's talk about He Got Game. Let's get into it. We open with a game of basketball in Brooklyn, New York, and we get introduced to Jake Shuttlesworth, played by Denzel Washington, in prison while shooting some hoops, as well until he has a chat with Warren Wyatt, played by Ned Beatty, about his son Jesus. Yes, that's really his name. I'm not making this up. Played by Ray Allen in a school called the Governor's Mater, Alma's Alma Master's University, maybe Mater. I don't know the word off the top of my head. Where he can play basketball as a career, and Jake can shorten his sentence as a parole, and Crude Up and Spivey as well, and goes on parole with Crude Up and Spivey, and we'll see how he got there later in the movie as Jake drinks something that makes him sick in the stomach, and Denzel once again turns in a great performance, and I really like the character that he's playing. Jesus plays basketball in Abraham Lincoln High School, which is in New York, I'm believing, as he plays like a professional, and he has people cheering for him. Even his girlfriend, Lala Bonilla, forgive me if I said that wrong, played by Rosario Dawson. As the other actors turn in some good work as well, while Spidey and Crudup take Jake to a safe house that looks like an apartment, and they leave him alone in the apartment with some money to take care of himself and his body, and they go over the rules of the parole, and they put an armor thing for his ankle on his ankle, and Jake learns he's got until Monday at midnight, and the cinematography is well shot by director Spike Lee. We get to Jesus running to the bus stop to high school, and meets Lala there. And Ray Allen is incredibly tall at 6'5". I had to look this up. While Lala wants Jesus to meet her family friend DeAndre for 5 minutes for reasons I don't fully understand, while he's with his cousin Coleman Sykes, aka Booger, played by Harper, as Jesus is in a dilemma on what school to go to for next year for college. And we move on to Jake encountering Sweetness, who comes off like an asshole, as well as Dakota Burns, played by Milla Jovovich, whom he slaps around as Jake goes on with his day and sees his daughter Mary, played by Zelda Harris, as she takes him to an apartment where Jesus pays the bills for high school with Uncle Bubba, played by Bill Nunn, whom, fun fact about that guy, he was in the future going to be in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man as Robbie Robertson, I think is his name. I forget the character, but I know who he is, and I know his character in Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi trilogy, but that's not why I'm here. Aunt Sally, played by Michelle Shea, and he comes up to speak with Jesus as he eventually gets home and kicks Jake out of the apartment and is led to believe he has no father, which is pretty fucked up, and the acting is well done by the actors. Jesus takes Mary to Uncle Bubba and Aunt Sally's apartment, with Booger living with them, as Uncle Bubba believes Jake is trying to escape to get some money, which is not the typical reason, as Jesus says, as Jake has to talk with him anyways, and he wants to meet up at the Garden, which is a basketball court next to their apartment, and Jesus doesn't want to think about the decision of what school to go to next year, as Uncle Bubba tells Jesus about getting a job while Mary plays PlayStation with Booger, and Jake gets some shoes as the store clerk sees the ankle machine, and Jake bullshits his way through it, and Jesus brings Booger to talk with Jake, and leaves them be to have their conversation while they're playing some basketball with one another. And Jake starts the conversation wrong as Jesus tears up the letters from him to Jesus and Mary, and brings up his proposal, which is going to be the governor's university. That's what it was, governor's university. My fault there earlier. And the writing in this is very good, as I like the dialogue said by these actors. Jake learns Jesus doesn't like his name because people will pray to him like he's the biblical name. Even Booger, as he with Jesus are cousins, and Jesus walks away from Jake not forgiving the poor guy because Jake accidentally killed his mother, and we'll see how later in the movie, which will make perfect sense when I get there. And Jesus gets back to the apartment and with Mary, and she wants to make a phone call to Jesus, holding up the phone all night long, and Mary tells Jesus things people are saying about him while he grabs her arm and yells at her at the same time, and we're like, whoa, this motherfucker is aggressive is for being named Jesus. But to be fair, nobody is perfect, as the Lord will forgive him like Jesus in this movie. And not the biblical guy, but I'm talking about the character in this movie. And we move on to Jesus being on the TV as Uncle Bubba and Jesus watch it, and same with Jake, as there's interviews with Shaquille O'Neal as well as Michael Jordan. And is this a documentary about Jesus as a basketball player in the future? Because it would make sense, and this is very well told by director Spike Lee. Sweetness abuses Dakota, while Jake hears it from next door while trying to sleep, as Jake comes next door to calm Dakota down, and she treats Jake like shit at first, but he gives her some respect as well as a fixer-upper in the face, and she returns the favor by saying she likes talking to him, and the production design and set decoration was well staged for the movie. And Dakota wants to know about Jake as a person, and he helps her find her wig underneath the bed. And it was nice to see Milla Jovovich not in an action role, whereas here and Dazed and Confused are two of her greatest performances, while Lala calls Jesus about meeting with DeAndre, and the editing in this was super tight, as you won't have any complaints from me as far as the editing is concerned about the 2-hour and 16-minute running length, whereas last time with Malcolm X, there were things that needed to be edited down, in my opinion. Jesus signs some autographs for kids until Booger pushes them off, until Big Time Willie comes by as Jesus pushes himself and Booger in Willie's car because Jesus sees Jake, and Willie drives them to school, as Jesus is quite the celebrity in the streets of Brooklyn, as Willie gets aggressive because he hasn't had his coffee yet. And he tells Jesus and Booger news of their streets ran by Willie, with some very good dialogue, as Jesus plays some basketball with a couple of cheaters and talks with the coach about a decision for which college to go to, and Jesus still hasn't decided yet, and the coach wants to give $10,000 to him, but he doesn't want to take it as it has not yet been decided. And the struggle with Jesus is very real because he doesn't know which school to go to, and this movie does a good job at making it realistic. Jesus meets the university coaches in their homes as they treat Jesus with some Lamborghinis for him, as he's an all-star player, as one of the houses is owned by an agent of some kind, and I thought that's weird, and I thought he was a coach of the university, as he gives him a $36,000 watch, and the agent makes a point of color of line, as he's a Caucasian, meaning white. Jesus is an African American, meaning black, and money is green. Don't make me go the racial route. As he reads a letter from his mother, as we flash back to Jesus learning how to play some basketball, as Jake drills as young Jesus like a motherfucker, young Jesus like a motherfucker, excuse me. And the writing is very well done, and Jesus and Jake practice their moves, not with each other, but in different scenes, as we get flashbacks, while Jake makes a distraction from hearing Sweetness and Dakota humping each other's asses by throwing a basketball at the wall. And this is an underrated movie that I actually like at this point, as it's a pretty good movie. We flash back to Jake going very hard on Jesus in a flashback and pushes him, and Jesus throws the ball over the fence, and we learn Jake is drunk, and nobody gets the ball as Jesus is upset with his father. As they have dinner, Jake comes in with Jesus, his mother, and Booger all drunk and shit, to the point that eventually Booger goes back home, and Jesus wants to be excused from the dinner table and beats up on Jesus and throws Jesus' mother on the counter as he was drunk, and tells Jesus to call 911. which makes sense because this motherfucker just threw her to the counter while all drunk and shit, as it makes sense while we move forward to Jesus meeting Jake at the beach and talk about the basketball players he grew up with as a favorite. And Jake tells Jesus why he named him Jesus, and that's because of a famous basketball player from the past. And Jake mentions a situation about Jesus going to the governor's university to shorten his sentence, and Jesus gets upset over the decision, as he still hasn't decided yet. And Jake gives Jesus a hug for a goodbye for now, and checks out a university, Jesus does, where he meets some gorgeous women and humps their asses. And this movie is absolutely well done, as this is a well-made movie. While at the college, Jesus meets Coach Billy Sunday, played briefly by John Turturro, after a presentation for Jesus, only to hear and afterhand have some lunch. And like I brought up, humping a couple of college girls' asses on a waterbed while Jake visits the high school to meet Lala for the first time and asks her if she has seen Jesus, until DeAndre comes by to protect her, until Jake beats his ass and walks away. And these scenes are well made, as this movie is well done at this point, like I said. Jake catches up with Booger and eventually goes to Crudup and Spivey and at a hot dog restaurant before it was a franchise called Nathan's Hot Dogs, and asks them for money for Dakota reasons. And Crudup acts like an asshole at this point, and Jake picks on Dakota for food purposes so they can have a meal together, and he gives her money to have dinner together, which was a nice scene between Denzel and Milla Jovovich, as they smooch one another, and their chemistry was actually pretty good. And Jesus gets home, and Uncle Bubba picks him up, and they talk about a trip and asks Jesus for a car, and he says take it back, with Jake visiting Jesus' mother's grave at the cemetery. And I like where this is going, as it makes perfect sense. Jesus confesses to Lala he has sexual intercourse with college women, as he might not be with her forever with Lala, while Lala talks about his mother and being a mother, talking about why she was pregnant in the first place and got the abortion, and having an argument until she kisses him and she leaves him afterhand. And we move on to Jake wanting to play one-on-one with Jesus, and they make a deal. If Jake wins, he signs the governor's university paper, and if Jesus wins, he'll go to any school he wants and Jake will stay the hell out of Jesus' life forever. As they play one-on-one, and eventually Jesus wins, and Jake agrees to stay out of his life forever. And this ended up rather sad, but Jake does agree to stay away, which felt promising. And this is a good road for Denzel and Spike Lee's work relationship, as Jake is picked up by Spivey and Crudup, and they take him back to prison, and he plays a round of basketball and almost gets killed by the guard, but Jake throws the ball over the big fence, like Jesus did with him earlier in the film, and walks back while Jesus wants to go to the governor's university after all. And the climax made this a well-made movie, but how well done was it? Let's talk about it. I'll give this movie a 8.1 out of 10. Denzel once again turns in a great performance, and I really like the character he's playing as well as the other characters, as they turn in some good work as the other actors do, as the acting was well done in this movie, and the cinematography is well shot by Spike Lee, and the writing in this is very good, as I like the dialogue said by these actors. Spike Lee tells this story very well, and the production design and set decoration was well staged for this movie, as the editing was tightly put together, as I didn't have any issues with it, as it was tightly put together, unlike Malcolm X, where there were times things to cut out of the movie. And this movie does a good job at making things very realistic for a high school student going to college with a tough decision. The writing in this is very well done, as this is an underrated movie that I actually like at this point, as it's a pretty good movie. And this is a solid recommendation for this movie, because this movie is well done and absolutely well made. And this is a very good, and with a very good message, is to pick whatever college you go to and play some basketball. And at the end of the day, it is a well done movie. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time we'll be back with Inside Man. And what Spike Lee movie will I talk about then? I'll talk to you about it then. But until then, show enough. You dig?